A task that we'll do quite a bit in Photoshop is removing the background from an image. Photoshop is a really great tool for doing just this type of work. So we want to take a look at how we would do that with this picture that we have here. Photoshop actually has a number of different ways to do each type of technique that we may want to do. So sometimes it depends on the picture that you're using to determine what tool would be the best for this task. So I'm going to go ahead and show you each of the different ways that we can do this, and then you may have to determine, based off of the picture that you're using, which tool would be the best to do this task. So removing the background is a great technique. It allows us to put a spotlight on the object that we are trying to focus on, getting rid of the background so that we could put this picture into another one without the blue background coming with it as well. Now, one thing that you may notice is that in our case, this background is pretty much exactly the same color. So a great tool that we could start with to be able to remove the background is if we come over here and we pick what's called the quick selection tool. The quick selection tool works by trying to find all the similar colors. So what we could do is take our tool, quick selection tool, click and just kind of drag our finger while we have it clicked and are holding it down, and try to just click and select all of this blue as much as possible. As we do that, you'll see that Photoshop is pretty good about coming in and it finds the edges and it goes around and selects all of the blue that we might have that we had clicked on. This worked really well because the background was pretty uniform in color. Now, the one thing that we want to make note of, though, is that what we have selected right now is the background. You'll notice this dotted line going around the outline and the dotted line going around the bird. That helps us to know that what we actually have selected is all of the blue background. Now, once we have that selected, typically what we'll do is with two fingers, we're going to click on our mouse pad and, whoops, and once we have those, do that two finger select or two finger click, we have an option to do what's called layer via copy. When we do layer via copy, what it's going to do is it's going to make a new layer of whatever it is that we had selected, and it's going to do it by copying it. This is what's called non-destructive editing, and the benefit of doing this is that if we make a mistake, we can always go back to what we did before, and we didn't actually erase anything, we can always get back to it. So we're going to hit layer via copy, and what you'll notice is that over here now, we've got a second layer, and it made a copy of whatever we had selected. So if we hit the eye next to this bottom layer, it's going to hide that bottom layer, and we should only see the layer that we just made a copy of, and what we see is that we made a copy of just the blue background. It's actually exactly the opposite of what we wanted to have happen. So that's not too bad though. What we can do is just hit Command Z, and we'll hit Command Z 2 times to get back to where we had started when we had this dotted line. Now, in this case, it was easier for us to select the background because the background was a uniform color. And so this tool worked really well in that regard. However, if we want to get rid of the background and just have the bird selected, what we'll need to do is come up to select and hit inverse. Inverse just means the opposite. And so by clicking on inverse, it actually switches what the dotted line has selected. So the dotted line now is around the bird, but it's no longer around our outline. Now, when we do a two-finger click on the bird, we go to layer via copy, we notice that we still get the layer, second layer over on the side. However, this time when we click on the eye, it makes the outline or the background go away, and what we get is just the bird, which is exactly what we wanted. Once we've done that, we can use some of the other tools that we've looked at previously. We could hit Command T, and we see that we get this boxes around the bird. We could shrink the bird, we could rotate it, we can make it look like it's flying, whatever the case may be. Hit the check mark, and that will put that in place. Okay, so that's the first way that we could do that. That's the first tool that we could use in order to make that happen. Now, let's go ahead and hit Command Z, and I just want to show another tool that we could use as well. The quick selection tool made that one very easy. However, sometimes the background is not that easy, and it's not as easy to cut out. In fact, what I'm going to have you do is go ahead and go back to our um, web page. And if you chose a different one, let's say you chose this picture of the van, and we're going to save this one. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come into Photoshop and I'm going to open that one as well. When I go into this picture will notice the background has lots of different colors. And even the wheels are pretty similar in color to the road. So it makes the quick selection tool a little bit harder to use. It's not going to be nearly as easy as the bird was. So when we have something like this might be a case where we want to use a different tool. And in this case, the tool that I want to use is called the magnetic lasso. Now, in order to get to this tool, you'll notice you have this little lasso here. If you click and hold down on the tool, you'll notice that you've got options for these other tools. Anytime you see this little triangle in the corner of the tool, it's telling you that there's more tools behind it. So I'm going to go down and I'm going to select the magnetic lasso. The way the magnetic lasso tool works is it tries to find the edge and the difference between the colors. So I click once to start it, and I can just drag my finger around, and it does a pretty good job of finding the difference in colors between the lines and the object that I'm trying to go around. All I have to do is drag my finger around, and it will does a pretty good job of finding where it's supposed to go. Now, sometimes when you make a turn like this, you may want to click, and clicking kind of forces the dot to go in the place that you want it to, so that it goes exactly where you want it and doesn't get out of its way. As I continue around, I'm going to try to go around the tires, and sometimes the tires and different things can be a little bit difficult, but I'm going to try to do my best to go around and select all of that. Now, there might be times where you start going off and you're like, oh no, I'm off track, and I get way out of alignment here. If you hit the delete key on your keyboard, you'll see that it takes out the previous point, and I can go back and I can continue moving around the van. And my goal with the magnetic lasso is that I'm going to go all the way around the van or the object that I'm trying to cut out, and I'm going to try to get back to where I started. And once I get back to where I started, what you should notice is that my cursor has a little circle that goes around there. So you'll see if I move back a little bit, that circle goes away, but once my cursor goes back on the point that I started, that little circle comes in. Basically what it's saying is that I completed the circuit. I made a complete circuit or a complete circle all the way around the object. I click one more time and it turns into the dotted line. I can then do my two-finger click, layer via copy, and then I can come over to my background layer and I can go ahead and hit the eye next to the background on the bottom layer, and it takes it away. And overall, it did a pretty good job. I probably could have spent a little bit more time going around the tires, but for our purposes, just to kind of show how the tool works, I think it worked pretty well.